Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of Factory Talk. Here with Carrie Thomas. Really excited to get into this topic.
Factory Talk Secrets of Effective Plant Leaders. Produced by
So, Carrie, just to start, why don't you introduce yourself?
Carrie Thomas, Hallmark Cards. I'm an employee here for 21 years in June. So I always tell people it's definitely been like I've started over probably 9, 10 times. I started in manufacturing, went into Kansas City for about 14 years, went into a role that enabled me to come back out to the plant about 2015, 14, 15 timeframe. And then just continued to find opportunities to come back out. Now I'm the production manager here at the plant of almost about 1,000 people for Hallmark Cards. So that's it.
That's fantastic. And Hallmark has obviously is a company that I think everybody will be familiar with. It's been around a long time. It is the the iconic brand of its industry in a lot of ways. And certainly when looking at a brand with that history, and you go to a card store or a drugstore or anywhere else you see the product proliferation. Between the history and the products and everything else, what's the most interesting thing to you just about being at a company like Hallmark?
I think the most interesting is that everybody knows it, no matter what. Like if you say a card, somebody's going to say Hallmark, right? If they see a card, it's a Hallmark card. So I'm proud of that. And I've been reading an article recently. It was about your brand, right? But it's from a company perspective and working for companies that are recognized. Because when you're with a company that's recognized for what their brand and what they stand for, and it's and what we stand for, and our mission is so powerful. Creating Carrie Connected Lives for everyone, then it's easy to be seen as a company that other people want to be a co-brand of, if that makes sense. And so I'm proud to work for this company, and I think it takes a while to realize the power of what we stand for, and I feel very fortunate to work for the company. So that's what I was thinking about earlier today too, is just what we mean for the world. And that we're actually still, during a pandemic, doing well because people need to connect more than ever. And you hear a lot of people say, if I didn't have to do another Zoom meeting, right?
Yep.
In my life, I wouldn't. So our card sales have actually been really good, and that's a good thing.
That's fantastic. So you gave some of your history. Kind of coming up to being a factory leader, what job do you think prepared you the best for your current role, and why?
So I started in 1999 as a section manager. And a section manager is the frontline manager on the floor right out of college. And they sent you through 2 days of interviews and then kind of place you based on how you interview when you'd be best for. So I was in Topeka, Kansas, at our operation there. And it really taught me about people, engaging with people at a young age, but also part of who I am that is still so authentic to who I am as a leader today, of what makes people tick, the authenticity, being on that front line, the problems that come up. And I think at one point I had like 42 people. I started on second shift and off shift, and that taught me so much about resiliency too, right? And being able to push forward and make decisions, and humbleness when you did get it wrong, to take the coaching. So that was so key in this role now, because coming back into the plant, and there's a layer between me and the front line now. I understand, like I have a baseline to start from and a foundation of what it is to be out there. And I can use that when I'm trying to engage and when I'm trying to influence or share experiences. That's the way that you connect. And a lot of the people that are here, even with the merging of, we had 2 plants merge from Topeka into Lawrence, there are people that are here that I managed 21 years ago, and they remember me. And so that connection is so important to this role now. But a close tie is I was a lean strategist for a little while, and I interacted with you during that time. And that helped me kind of just put it all together. It was a gift to me to go into that role. And it was something that I chose to do for myself to be able to better myself. And it was an investment to take some of these things, but put some strategic and practical and tools and thinking in place. So I got to bring that back too.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, factories, there's products, there's machines, right? But it's the people that make it hum. And as you said, almost 1,000 people. It's a lot of opportunities to handle those relationships as you talk about. So, in dealing with that many people and dealing with different shifts and all the things going on, what are your most important touch points? How do you stay in touch with the pulse, what they need from you, what you need from them?
There's the most important is it, and what's important to me is to understand who needs it when you walk in the door every day, right? I get IMs immediately. If it's an operator on the floor, it may be an email from third shift, hey, can you come see me? I get a pulse from the floor. I make sure I spend time out on the floor, walking around, talking with the people on the floor. They will let me know. I ask consistent questions. How are you? What do you think about what's going on right now? You will get feedback from either a personal lens or a professional, so you listen to both. Part of understanding the pulse too is pausing this and truly listening and being present in the moment with them on the floor, because they need that, and they can sense the authenticity of why you're asking the question, and if you're really engaged on why you're asking those things. And another question I ask sometimes, depending on who I'm talking with and filling out the situation, is, are you happy? And you never know how someone will answer that question. It would be either still from a personal perspective or a professional, but that tells you a lot of what's going on too. Are people bringing things in that's affecting production? And especially during a pandemic right now, they will start sharing more on that side, or they go down the path like, why are we still doing this? And we still have a lot of people that are calling in or not coming in, and it's affecting me to be able to do my job, right?
Yep.
So, hey, we're working on that. And then it enables me to then share the business side and what's happening. On a more structured side of it, to get a pulse, it was telling you I had 20 department meetings across 3 shifts. I kicked off every single one of them. I stood in front of the room with the people to take questions and take a friendly fire, I guess, before the pandemic hit, just to understand what's happening. And I opened it up every time, and I really wanted them to feel comfortable that this is a safe place, and I need to understand what's happening and what your concerns are. That was more around rolling out a performance assessment system. But that tells you a lot when you're able to get in front of people. And it was important that it was me at the front of the room sharing where we were going for alignment and a vision, but also to hear what they had to say about it. I wrote down just a few other notes, but I think the biggest thing is just being there, being on the floor, talking with the people. And it's the same, no matter what the level is, it's the same. Are you there? Are you chatting with people? Are you communicating? And then are you listening, right, to what's happening?
Yeah. Well, I like that question, are you happy? Because it's not one they're probably used to, so you can ask how you doing, and somebody will just say fine, because it'll end the conversation and they were ready for it, but probably not ready for are you happy? They have to think before they respond.
Yeah, because you can kind of feel it sometimes from people. You're really listening, you can sense that there's something going on. And so that one, yeah, it does. It catches a lot of people off guard.
Yeah.
And something I do. I don't think everybody probably does that, but something I do.
Nice. Well, you used a big important word when it comes to leadership: authenticity. Being authentic in your engagement. So I'm kind of curious if this is part of the next question, but when you look for frontline leaders to fill new roles, it's always not always, but sometimes a high turnover role, a tough role. It's the first line of defense, the first line of offense. What do you look for in your frontline leaders?
And they know this too. I sit down with all the frontline leaders. We put career maps in place. We can get more into that around the development side, but I ask my staff, their direct leaders, to put career maps in place and share with them what is it that they want to do to get a pulse of, what they want to do with their careers. And it could be, I want to retire in 2 years, and that's okay. At least you know where somebody is, right? Understand that. And then I do a follow-up. And the reason I share that is because that's when I start doing some of my assessment too. That's a one-on-one time when I get to understand what makes them tick, what's important to them, but then also set the expectations as well. So you get just a glimpse of somebody in an interview process, and you don't always know how that's going to turn out right. It's just such a small amount of time that you're trying to figure some things out. But you're like, I see a few characteristics, and based on these questions, they'll probably be pretty good, right? Mm-hmm. You look at their background and their leadership experience. Have they volunteered? Were they a farm kid, right? Where did you, what part of the country did you grow up, or when did you grow up? And that tells you a lot about somebody on that side of it. But then you get in and we make assumptions, I think, sometimes about what people understand. So there's a point you have to engage, and I always draw a line down the center of a piece of paper and go visual with it. And when I'm chatting with them, the front line, I always say there's an EQ side, which is the emotional intelligence, and then there's the IQ side. And my expectation of this role is that you know when to use each, mm-hmm. and you have to have a balance of both. But I don't expect you to have everything. So what was interesting is, so this is I don't know if anybody else has ever done this. I thought about the questions that you were asking, and what I've always struggled with is, and doing the interview too, is I'm like, man, I'm sharing this from my perspective, but if I could really do it, I'd have my panel behind me, right? I'd have, or here, and I'd be behind, and answering these things and these questions to you directly about me.
Yeah.
Right? That would be more telling than me sharing with you my own thoughts. So I pulled together some frontline leaders actually just this morning.
Nice.
And I said that. I said, what do you think that I look for in frontline leaders? Right? So then you know if it sticks.
Right. That's a good PDSA right there.
Yes. And oh, it was so funny. One of the moments was so funny this morning. They just gave me this look, and I said, well, it's a good thing we're getting ready to do problem solving refreshing. You guys just sealed the deal, right? So, but that was part of it. When we went down the EQ side, you heard words like authenticity, empathy, connection, the capability, can you connect with people, right? There's a common sense piece in there. I recently shared a TED Talk about grit. Mm-hmm. Right? We hold ourselves to everybody else's standards, but this grit thing really has something about it. And that was one of the small little leadership meetings I had, just to share with them, at the end of the day, it's that moxie and grit that you bring, right? Do they listen? Do they pause to listen? Are they curious? I mean, all these things, the follow through. Are they socially aware? Are they self-aware? So you can find out a lot just with watching how they interact with their people. But those are the things I'm always looking at. On the IQ side, is there some logic and reason there? Do they have a really strong learning agility? Because some people might not come in with some of those IQ or skill sets that are needed from a executional systems perspective. Do they have the learning agility, right?
Right.
Cognitive skills, business acumen from an IQ. do they understand as I share the why, do they have that? It's like that fire in the belly, desire to learn, and that comes out too based on the questions they're asking.
Mm-hmm.
And I look for problem solvers. And they may not know that's what they're doing, but they have that methodical way that they go about how they think about problems coming up. So that's how I separate it from the EQ and IQ side. And those are just a few of the things that I'm always constantly assessing and going, you're really good at that. And as a frontline leader, that's where this is going to take you, or this experience is part of your story. And when they do their career maps, what's funny is they'll talk me through it. And I do this with my staff too. And I said, I'm going to tell your story back to you.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's your baseline, it's your foundation of where you start,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your story. And it could be an experience that, work experience, working on the farm, whatever it is, it taught you something about that got you to the place where you are right now. So for frontline, I think that's very important. And I have a lot of non-traditional, I had one of the people say leadership experiences, like where they're part of a team and sports. And I was like, yeah, but we have a lot of non-traditional as well.
Right.
It's not always from a collegiate perspective, right? It can be from just working out in the industry, and they're good leaders. So.
Well, that's great. It sounds like you have a framework, and you have flexibility within that framework to start with, and then to build from there, which I think is important, right? So you're not looking for perfection, and there's a lot of things that they can bring to the table, but some are easier to learn than others. But given that framework, you can assess and you can build
and complement.
And complement.
If they're missing something, then if they're missing part of their puzzle, or the piece of the puzzle, that's okay if they're self-aware. But it's also my job and my leader's job is to say, it's not your strongest suit on the people front. You have great analytic capability. So I would always run that by somebody that's stronger in that before you make a decision, right? Mm-hmm. And calling those things out, we make just so many assumptions, Jamie, about what we think people should know, instead of being more overt in a kind way of just sharing, hey, this is how it works, and this is the expectation. And I share that with the operators too in all the department meetings, because the older you get, the more you think, well, they should just know that. Why? Because they walked in the door? Mm-hmm. You think they should have known that's not how you do that to that machine, or that's not how you take your breaks and lunches? We make so many assumptions, right?
Yep.
So anyway, I digress.
So, with the demands of daily production and everything going on, the need to get product out the door and get people to their jobs, what do you do to help do that development work, to help build people in the midst of all that other demands on their time as well as yours?
So it comes back to our standard work. Anytime when a new leader comes in, we do the career maps, and we actually have a thing that we do their favorites, and it's ice cream. It's like the small things, movies, places to shop, things like that, because that's a reward system as well. Mm-hmm. And that's part of development. When you understand what makes somebody tick, and you can make it a very personal thing as well, because it's like, what is the Maslow hierarchy of needs? Is that did I say that right? Yeah. At some point, it's not about money. Maybe it's a seminar. Maybe that I've shared an article with them to have a discussion about, hey, read this and let's compare notes on it. A lot lately has been around the diversity side of things. So having panel discussions. The panel discussions that we've had recently was around my staff, and I moderated. It was so fun. And our HR manager was at the front with us, and had 3 shifts, brought the leaders in, and would ask a question around what's one of the traits that you wish you'd known about, younger in life that you would change now, or experiences. And storytelling is such a big part of development as well, and people don't sometimes grasp that, because I think it's called a blind bias that you can have, that you don't even know until you hear a story and an experience from someone else, that you can connect the dots of maybe that's how I need to start thinking about it, or if that's how I might change or look at things differently. So we do that. We have leadership meetings. In the leadership meetings, we talk about all the metrics, but we also share the pulse of what's happening from even medical things, those things that we think they should just know, right? We do that. We cover those. Development too, I think, comes in autonomy, giving people projects, seeing how they do, and making sure that you coach them along the way and you teach them. And when I say coach them along the way, and doing it with kindness, is making sure that, one, great for going after it. And like, I just had a couple people come in today and share out a project and said that was great work. The evolution of this then is then going and influencing your peers, because when you influence your peers, what you're doing is you're building a foundation that someday you may work for them or they may work for you. And do they see you as a leader and somebody they would look to for answers, and that you would be, trustworthy of their time and helping them to grow. So all those things, I was thinking about it today, as part of their development, that when you pause, it doesn't always have to be a week conference or monetary. It's the little things that make a difference.
Yeah.
And my staff, we have constant discussions. What they see from me is I'm very strict about what we go through on our standard work for our staff meetings. And it is around alignment. It's what we have to drive. And then we stay disciplined too. After we get through that, we can cover the ad hoc items of things that's happening. Now, if the fire's burning or if it's a safety issue, we better be talking about it right away, right?
Sure.
But that's part of their development, that sometimes I have to say, now, do you see what's happening here? How does that change your thinking? How does that help you structure your thinking to be more effective? Because we get caught just in the spiral of things sometimes. So
that's great, and certainly more diverse than just a training program, right? So I like to hear all the different levers that you get to pull as a coach, and you're really pulling opportunities out of the daily life. So from our history in the past how important culture is to me, and getting the right behaviors. What behaviors are important for you to drive in your organization? What do you focus on in terms of that culture?
Right now it's safety. The behaviors better be around that, right? Mm-hmm. I think I shared the other day, I wish I just had like a foghorn sometimes and a sign that said, pull your mask up, pull your mask up, pull your mask up, right? But what's interesting is on the way down here, there were two operators speaking, and they were distance apart, but one of them had his, when you're speaking, your mask pulls down, and he looked over and just pulls up, right? So they know, but so it's a behavior, right? It frames our culture right now, and our culture had to shift a little bit because of that. Everybody's had to. So that's key. But I thought about, the behaviors of how do you demonstrate engagement? What does that look like? What does alignment look like? What does it look like when you have good standard work? How does that come out, and why is it important that it comes out as part of your culture? And where it comes out is your results. It comes out in what we end up measuring. And it comes out in when I walk up to an operator and they ask questions of why. That's a cultural thing as well, because if you engage people and you teach them more and you're more transparent about the business and why we're going a direction that we're going, and not just saying, because I asked you to do that, right? It opens that door and it starts changing your culture and your behaviors. that you will see me, I'll grab a marker and I'll start writing on a whiteboard, and we'll talk through the numbers, and I'll be like, do you know what that means? And this is why we measure it this way, and this is, and here's what our customers and consumers are doing, and this is what's happening in the business. And I truly believe that that's important to show, and not for me, but it starts coming alive on the floor. And we have a long ways to go. I mean, in all honesty, we have a long ways to go with what that looks like, to get it to where it needs to be. And like what you said, turnover in factories are pretty high. We're pretty fortunate to not have a high attrition rate, but we also dropped from 25 years of average seniority and, over 110 years to 17 in less than 2 years.
That's a lot of knowledge walking out the door.
Yeah, a lot of stats that we're getting into as well. So one thing that the team said this morning too, when I asked them that question, I said, what do you think, that means from demonstrated behaviors? And you never know, I just watched and listened, right? But they said teamwork, empathy, and integrity.
Good.
So I thought that was interesting because we talk a lot about that too. So as you bring it up from the floor to the leadership level, when you start setting those expectations, that's when it starts permeating throughout the company. So, yeah. Fantastic.
So, I find the location of your factory, which I've been to before, interesting because it's far enough away from the corporate headquarters that people don't just pop in, but it's also not so far away where they can't say, hey, please show up for a 2 o'clock meeting over at headquarters. So, you have a ton of demands inside the 4 walls, but then of course those 4 walls exist for a greater purpose. So how do you balance the needs between that larger entity and what your operation needs on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, and this is what's so important, Jamie, is I call it threading. And I think you might have taught me that word on an A3 at one point about being able to thread, right? That applies to so many different things, but this in particular about strategies. So there's a corporate side of the corporate strategies and why we have those strategies, but at the end of the day, it's about your customers and your consumers. At the end of the day, we are the only greetings manufacturing plant in the United States for Hallmark Cards that is owned by Hallmark Cards, and we have a big responsibility to deliver to those customer needs and consumer needs. So of course, internally, when I think about our customers, and that's what I educate on, corporate is a customer of ours. We are a strategic asset, right? But in being that strategic asset, we have to execute and keep our costs low. We have to continue to be seen as a strategic asset that they can depend on us to grow when we need to, and change on a dime when we need to. So alignment with them starts out as simple as, what is the strategies, or is what we're working on aligned with those strategies, and constantly asking our questions, are we working on the right things in that alignment? So that's when you set your strategies, and then you go into your daily metrics and behaviors and stuff like that. Does that work, right? The way that comes to life in here too is we have roles that link back up into Kansas City that are constantly feeding to me. I don't look at it as just a production role that I just execute. It is about the education to the people on the floor. So it even goes further to educate on the business and the why, back to the people, because right now, I don't think people would understand when I say the hundreds of million of WIP that we have on the floor right now, because the time that we had to be down, we had to reset everything when we came back, but everything is a priority on the floor right now. And when that comes to life like that can create chaos. But in the chaos, you have to find the structure and a foundation. And I keep saying, get back to basics. go back to the things that we put in place, understand what it means to be serviceable, understand what it means to schedule and run the right work. And that right work right now may be different every day based on what the demand is, and we have to be able to adjust to that. So there's our upfront customers, and it really goes back to the consumers that pull that card out of the pocket and say, this is the one that I like, right? That says, okay, we need another one, right? And then the customer teams, and then you go to the backside, and it's our distribution center that's that wholesale service ability. We've got to make sure that they have what they need.
Yep.
That is so important in a manufacturing environment because they can get so caught in the chaos and everything's crazy. Carrie, this is crazy. There's stuff everywhere. That you have to reset on why we're doing what we're doing. It's chaos right now, but we've got to continue our structure. We've got to keep moving forward. We can't, okay, you want to bitch and moan a little bit about it, that's okay. That's okay, get it out. But it is what it is, and we have to continue to move forward. And that's how we have to continue to align and have different conversations. That's how I look at it, Jamie, and always have, but very much about not having just our own strategy as a plant, because I think that can happen without saying, that's great, fine and dandy, but did you link back up to really the end consumer and the customers to make sure that you're tied into what the need is? So that threading is very important.
Yeah, you use words like strategies and alignment, right? And all that helps inform the why, right? So people have to be clear on the why of what they're doing. That's how they get through that. So, all right, I have one last question, and this has been a fun one, I think. It's always been interesting. So if you had to choose one lean tool or method to really drive in your factory, really make the center of your toolbox, what would it be and why?
Okay. This was a fun one too, because I asked the frontline leaders, because I came out here 2014-15 timeframe as a lean strategist and worked with top leadership, top down, and did the systematic problem solving. Because we had our own lean house, right? And that was one of our modules, was the systematic problem solving. And so today I asked that to, and I think probably 80% of the frontline managers in the room had been through it. But those words didn't come out of their mouth, right? I got 5S. What was the other one I got? 5S, standard work, right? That's the other. I got some blank stares. I said, well, you guys just solidified the fact we're going to go back through systematic problem solving, you know, and which erupted in laughter because in systematic problem solving, so that's my choice.
Yeah.
And when I say that, it's just regardless if it's PDCA, if it's a mesh of both of them, it's relying on a methodology of a common language and a common approach that you put in place that people know how to start with a baseline and a foundation of this is how we speak. And that one in particular has been so key over the years. And it's not only been key from a professional and driving results of because you think similarly and you have that foundation to start from, but personally for me, it's been one of the biggest gifts of my life because it provides structure. I know I go back to, I think what is the problem? And rewriting it and rewriting it and rewriting it and even going through an entire, A3 or a mapping process or whatever it may be. You're talking about the fishbone diagrams and the whys, whatever it may be, that all goes inside of that methodology of systematic problem solving, right? You can pull out any tool and use any tool or even a method within a method with using that method, the PDC or systematic problem solving method. So that's by far my favorite, and it's going to take a lot for me to move off of it.
Well, nobody's going to make you move off of it. That's you can own that, and looks like you have an opportunity to reinvest some energy into that based on what you learned.
Great. Yeah, and I want to teach classes, but Matt's like, I don't know about that, you know. So I love engaging with them when they go through it. And I heard something the other day. It was about when you find your purpose, then it's when your purpose is defined and you find it, then you feel alive. And it's something that you physically moves you, right? And you gain clarity. And when you gain clarity, you become trustworthy because you're solid, right? That's what that does. Like using that and having that as a foundation, it provides such purpose for me, and I get so energized. And to even like one of the section managers here the other day, I was helping them with justifying a position in the plant. And I said, what's the problem that you're solving for that you need this position for, right? So we started going through stats, and I said, but so this position, if you look at how much you're down, and because of operator and machine errors, that would help justify then. And if we have an attrition of 20%, and then they have downtime of this amount, that's like, by the time we add up, it's $500,000 a year that we could lose, or that we are losing because of this particular need, right? But what are the stats and the data behind it to say that this is what's needed? So I'm up there doing my thing, and he's just sitting back. He's like, I just love it. I love when you get up there, right? Because that's when the magic happens. That's when you start seeing it from a different perspective. But you watch people learn and grow. I even just got freaking goosebumps talking about it, because it's just like, that's when people start learning and growing and seeing things differently, because you get to tie what is truly the problem to data.
Yep.
Right. It's not always the right data, but at least it starts helping you look at something objectively versus so emotional. You still have that in there, but when you can get objective, it helps.
That's fantastic. So that brings us to the end. Appreciate you sharing your experience and perspective and best practices, and wish you and your team all the best. And thanks for sharing.
All right. Thanks, Jamie.